Welcome to the Trending XR podcast, where we discuss the latest in augmented reality, virtual reality, and AI with industry leaders who are shaping the future of how we will work, socialize, and go about our daily lives in the third dimension. In the not-so-distant future, we won't even be using phones. We'll be using these. I know, sounds crazy, but we have never been closer to this future concept becoming our current reality. I am so excited to share this new world with you. I hope to teach you, inspire you, and ignite your passion for extended reality. It's time to change dimensions. Are you coming? Welcome back to the Trending XR podcast. Today's guest is the CEO of Futurist, an immersive technology production company. Futurist specializes in virtual reality simulations, augmented reality development, and emerging technology consulting for enterprise-level organizations. I'd like to welcome on Annie Eaton.
Thank you.
Hey,
I'm
Annie.
so excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, very excited to have you on too, because it's been a long time coming. We met, about 4 or 5 years ago at one of your events. I think is it called XR Atlanta?
Yes.
So that was kind of like my first toe dip into meeting people who actually work in the space, which was like really, really cool for me, because I hadn't been around it before. It was only through like social media. Early on, Don Allen was kind of like one of my early influences on extended reality, particularly in the AR space. And I was like, where do I even start? So I like looked up events, and I was like, oh, cool, there's actually one in Atlanta. Like, what are the odds? So I went there, and that's where we met. And that kind of was like a really nice jumpstart for me to kind of get some contacts with people and ask questions and start learning.
Great. Yeah, I was so excited that you came. And it's funny, you were actually the one who introduced me to Don Allen's following in his work. And so thank you for that. I try to keep up with everything, but there's so much going on that recommendations from what other people are seeing is probably the best way to learn. So yeah, you definitely gave me something then too.
Yeah, that was a fun time in the space. That was that like 2021 or something? There was a lot going on then. It was hot. Everyone was talking about extended reality, and I think you mentioned that a lot in your book, which we'll get to at some part in this conversation, which might be a good time to segue into having you do an introduction of yourself. So I always like to start off with asking you about you, and if you have any specific recallable moments of when you got into the space that may have sparked your journey.
Yeah, so many recallable moments. I'll try to be brief with it. But yes, as you've kindly introduced me, I'm the CEO of Futurist, founded the company 11 years ago at this point, back in 2014. But even before that, I didn't really know too much about what the technology was. So I was very lucky to be working at a company with a friend. His name is Peter, and he introduced me to virtual reality, I think back in late 2013, early 2014. And we both got really excited about it. He was already an enthusiast for probably decades at that point, and just so excited that the Oculus DK1 had such a successful Kickstarter that he was telling everyone who would listen, and I listened. Very, very glad I did. He and I went on to start the Atlanta Virtual Reality Meetup, which became XR Atlanta, which is where you and I met. And then just out of the blue, people started asking where they could produce this kind of work or how their companies could use it. And so it wasn't necessarily like I set out to create Futurists, but it was kind of an organic thing to where there weren't that many people in the era of 2014 that people could turn to, especially in Atlanta, to work on this technology. And because of that Oculus DK1 device, accessibility of hardware was, I guess it just had a lower barrier of entry because of the cost and the price point being so heavily reduced. Prior to that, only medical and military use cases really got off the ground because a headset was like 10 grand. And so now you have this headset that's like $300 that you just need to run off a gaming computer. So that obviously was a very pivotal moment. I think just in the company's growth, again, very organically, we've kind of snowballed into where we are today just by building and building on each opportunity that presented itself. But there was one company, Georgia Pacific, who was the tipping point to where it was just contractors, just little proof of concept, little consulting work to like a full scale project. And while we wanted VR to be our primary, I guess, medium, AR was gaining a lot of traction in 2015, 2016, especially. And so we had already been having VR conversations. We did a little pilot project for them, and they said, well, can you do AR? We have a really big project we want to do. And so we're like, yeah, we can. Of course, small business just want to take any job. It was all kind of adjacent development skills. But it was a multi-year long project. It was going to be deployed to a national audience, and we ended up winning the project, and that was the point that allowed us to hire our first full-time employee. So, yeah, that's probably, of course, one of the most pivotal moments of the company, just because it gave us the stability to grow. But yeah, it also introduced AR to our skill set. So, a kind of a two birds, one stone project.
Yeah, that's a great origin story. I love that AR was kind of like the kick that got you guys going with full-time employees. That's my favorite part of the extended reality field is AR. There's so many cool things that you could do with it. I guess that's a great question for you is like, what do you guys all do at your company Futurists? I know VR is predominantly, I think, the share of what you guys build. But if there's other cool stuff with AR, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, and you're correct. VR is now currently our primary business. We have kind of fluctuated with what the market is demanding. And recently, I guess the past 3 to 4 years, we've settled into virtual reality training simulations, specifically for hard skills training, so process and safety training. We do still have a little bit of AR work, though. There is a project that we have been working on, continuing to work on for over 7 years now, with a fantastic construction equipment company called JLG. And we built and also continue to manage their JLG AR app, which hosts over 200 of their products, full scale iOS and Android, globally deployed in 20 languages. So, that's a
Wow.
project I don't want to get rid of. I love it. We love working with them. But beyond that, it really is mostly VR. I mean, as a small business, especially early on, we just had to take whatever was kind of aligned with where we wanted to be. I feel very lucky now that we get to choose the types of projects that we work on. So yes, I still really care about AR. It's just our niche has become VR training, and it makes more sense strategically for us as a company to just continue down that path. But even prior to training, we got to do some really incredible projects. A lot of marketing, AR, product visualization. We've done some interactive scavenger hunt projects. We even got to do a VR project for the Super Bowl back in 2019.
Oh,
So,
cool.
it's
I didn't know
been
that.
it's been a fun ride. Yeah, it was in partnership with United Way and the NFL. So it's, full of a lot of really amazing projects, but I will say settling into a niche has been very nice for my sanity.
Yeah, and we can get into that the technical side of how complicated building VR experiences is. Some people may, from a surface level, think it's like, oh, it's just like, it's just VR. It's just like some 3D elements, and you just put it in there, and people walk around. It's like, oh man, if you knew the technical back end of what goes into a VR experience and AR as well. Yeah, I'd love to talk about some of that. Maybe if you want to like pick if something comes to mind, like a project that you've done that you thought would be like a really cohesive piece of piece to talk about, to kind of like run through like what it's like to build something like this for a company and what all comes with that. Something that you talk extensively about in your book.
Yeah, certainly. So I think maybe I'll go back to a different project with Georgia Pacific, just because we did create a series of 8 different training simulations for their safety team. And it was with that project, which started, I think, 2022, that really helped us understand a great format for VR training delivery, which is We would show like a safety incident or something that would go wrong in a job site to really get people's attention, really like perk them up and say, oh my gosh, like that's real. I don't want that to happen to me. And then we would follow that by doing an interactive instruction portion. So teaching people the right way to do something. And then after that, follow with a knowledge check or an assessment to ensure that the trainee has absorbed the information and track the analytics and the completion and the scoring to verify that they know what they're doing to be able to enter that job. So we've used that format for quite a few other projects at this point, including a new safety training simulation that we are making available more widely called XR Industrial. But I really love that format. And when you talk about what goes into it, I mean, there's so many different components, even outside of just the design. The design itself, we could talk into in more detail, but just making sure that we're capturing the reality of a job and what it feels like to be there. I think when you're thinking about, making a website or making a mobile app, you're not really thinking, what does it feel like to be there? But you really do have to think about that with VR production. When we're talking about creating the environments and the models and the animations, optimization, and you've read my book, you're probably like, oh gosh, she beats it into you.
No, it's
Optimization is like
excellent.
the number one thing that people have to consider from start to finish. And that is something that if you don't take care in optimization, you're going to make people sick and they're not going to use your product. So that is why I say it. I'm worried that people are not going to take it seriously and give people a bad VR experience, which is going to in turn hurt the entire industry. So we think about that. We think about spatial planning. So where objects are in the space, how someone is going to navigate. Are they going to be able to move freely within the space? Are we going to have these little, we call them teleport nodes that they're going to pop between? Are we going to move the user for them, or are we expecting them to take action to move throughout? So there are those considerations. And then the development of the user flow or the implementation of the user flow, if it's linear, if there are any branching paths, so maybe they make a decision in one place and kind of like a choose your own adventure book, it takes you somewhere depending on that choice. And then how is that scored? We got to do all the implementation of the analytics to make sure the scoring calculations are correct. So not to get overwhelming with it, because I don't want that to be the end point here, but there's a lot that goes into it. And those are some of the things that we are always thinking about.
I think, yeah, that's excellent to hear all of it. And it's just, I think, a testament to everything that you guys have built over there, of like the complexities of all the challenges and things that have come up along the way. I'm sure you weren't thinking about all of these things when you started your VR company, and it's like kind of the journey of learning all this. You're like, oh wow, there's a lot going on in the back end that you have to learn. Just on the, you're building from 3D models to having to track like inserting KPIs, so you're tracking the users and heat maps, seeing what they're actually looking at, and trying to optimize, like you said, not to add things that you don't need to add. And that's that, all that comes down to like cost and like how much the budget is. So you don't necessarily always get to build the really cool idea, the full big idea. You have to isolate. So like there's a lot of stuff that comes along with that you might not necessarily think of. So I think it's really, really great to have that open convo on like the reality of of running a company like this. So that if, and much, a large testament to your book is, what that's really like in all of the different parts of that. And so that people listening can say, I've really thought about wanting to do something like that. And it's really great to have that information, because it's not necessarily readily available on the internet. It's a lot of pieces and parts. So it's really great to have all that info in one place. So thanks for sharing that. And I
Yeah.
think that would be kind of like a good segue into maybe getting into some of the results and things that you've done for some of these businesses, and like how they've implemented it into their companies, and how they've seen that enhance their employees' workflow and even business metrics like net profit and things like that.
Absolutely. Well, Since I was just speaking about that Georgia Pacific example, I know they did some benchmark testing. This was more about knowledge retention of the training material. And they did some assessments right immediately after training, and then at like a 1, 2, 3, and 6 month mark post training to measure a VR training cohort against the traditional learning cohort. And they did find that the VR training cohort had 30% higher knowledge retention than the others. So that was very promising. And some of our work with Delta Airlines, which I haven't really gotten into yet, they leverage virtual reality for knowledge checks and proficiency checks to ensure one of our projects for plane de-icing, they are competent and ready to de-ice planes. And one of the big bottlenecks and one of the reasons VR was chosen was because in order to do a proficiency check, you have to have a physical plane, and that takes planes out of commission, or it slows down, the process. We don't want to do that to customers. We don't want to have a limited amount of planes that can be in use just because of this. And so being able to create that completely in virtual reality and also add pretty much any variable you could think of to assess for any situation, allowed them to increase the amount of assessments they were doing from 3 per day per location to 150 per day per location. So that's massive. And then one of my manufacturing clients who has done a lot of machine and process training, they were able to reduce their training time from 12 weeks down to 6 weeks. They were able to increase the employee efficiency out of training by 18%. So they're not only shortening their time by half, but they're also coming out of training better than the previous classes were. And then they even recognized an employee retention increase of 10%. So now their employees are staying longer, probably because they're more confident and they're just not stuck in training for 3 months. So that one in particular, they've shared that they had a $20 million ROI within 6 months on one site. So when you think about the potential of scaling something like that across an organization, the numbers can get pretty massive.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know it was that extensive of a impact. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And then I think safety is another big one too. Where they're seeing probably a significant reduction in like accidents happening at work. Is that maybe true to the VR training as well?
It is. Yeah, I will say the safety numbers are a lot harder to get our hands on because a lot of companies will not share that information with us, but we have heard
That makes
positively
sense.
that the safety injuries are reduced. I can't say who, but one of our clients did have around 20% reduction in hand and finger injuries with our simulations. We also, have heard that over time, the goal is for the reduction in safety incidents to not only save on, of course, the human factor, which is the most important, but also workers' comp claims, OSHA violation charges, as well as insurance premiums. So there are just so many factors that go into calculating that ROI. It's a little harder for us to receive that information because they don't want to share it, but because it's very sensitive. But
Sure.
I am hearing that it is very positive. So I'm happy. If they won't tell me, at least they'll tell me it's working. So I love that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it sounds like you guys are like just immensely useful for companies to implement. Just on the productivity side, but also on the profiting side from the return on investment side from doing all this work with a VR company. I know a lot of companies are probably pretty hesitant because it's like, you're adding tech to your business, and that's always something that's maybe seems daunting. Do you have like maybe a piece of advice that you kind of like go through with companies who are interested in the early rounds in case they're listening now and they might be interested in reaching out and having you guys build something for them?
Yeah. I would say, even though you may not want to, it's probably good to include IT in the early conversations, especially if you're serious about it. And I mean, we work with massive companies. Walmart, one of the biggest company in the world, is one of our customers, and they have dedicated team members. IT is on board. It's deployed. So like it can be done, and it's absolutely possible to scale in mass. But IT does need to be a part of the conversation if it's going to go beyond like a phase one. There's some stuff you can kind of do quickly and easily, but I would say, getting the right people involved. Usually there is like one or two champions at an organization who are really passionate and excited about it. And they're the ones who really drive that excitement internally and are kind of selling it internally within their own company. That's normal. It's, I wish it was more widespread, but that is typical right now. So I would say just know for those individuals that like they are not alone. People are doing it and it can be done. The hardware is not as intimidating as it might seem to some people. There are some really great resources out there for not only acquiring the hardware, but also managing it remotely. So, for example, we use mobile device management systems that any company might use for their laptops or phones that exist for VR. There's a great company called Arbor XR that we use quite often, and it allows a lot of remote control, monitoring the devices, keeping track of your inventory, and even pushing out new content, and just the whole thing. So the tools are now in place to make it scalable. So I just don't want people to be intimidated, because that's something that my team would help walk anyone through. We don't expect anyone to know everything or even a little bit. Our job is to just be evangelists of the technology and help people understand it so that they can evangelize it too.
Yeah, it's great. I think that was an excellent explanation of that to people who might not know how it all works. Um, I think that like since we've gone through like kind of like how you guys do stuff with companies and how it's kind of effective for them. I'd like to maybe dabble back into like some of the challenges that you faced starting Futurists, and how you've overcame them. If you have anything that was like specifically like, whoa, wasn't expecting that one to come down the pipeline. Just like I think it'd be a fun combo to see how you guys have handled some of the bigger challenges that have come across your table.
Yeah, I am so many challenges. I'm trying to pick one or two. I mean, I think this was a choice and I'm glad we did this, but we did not go out and seek funding in the traditional sense. Once we've built up, the business, there's of course like business lines of credit and things, but like investors was not a path that we went down. We actually considered it. We spoke to we did a couple of pitches, and while maybe we could have continued down that path, that one big project I mentioned came in right around that same time. We're like, all right, we have this money. Let's not take investment. Let's not keep pursuing this. Let's just focus on the work and continue to grow that way. Thank goodness it worked. But also because what we do is the majority of it is custom. It's not necessarily something that makes sense for an investor type relationship. It's not like a SaaS product or anything like that. So I would say just like continued cash flow and consistency in revenue has been one of the biggest challenges over time. It's still always going to be a challenge. And that is why we have started to create our own licensed content because the projects are amazing, but they go up and down and up and down. And
Sure.
we try to plan as best we can, but that's just the nature of the beast in an agency type format. So yeah, our solution for that is creating licensed content that can kind of provide that underlying stability. So that's one thing that's just always a challenge. I do think that, well, couple other things. We got a lot of interest very early on just because not many people were doing what we were doing. But with that, we would get very excited and very fixated on opportunities that never panned out. And I feel like that can be very dangerous. It was very dangerous. It's very dangerous to any business to put so much effort into something without a true and legal commitment or a monetary commitment. And so I mean, in the beginning, we just kind of had to do what we had to do. But I will say the like heartbreak of things that have been told to you that are happening, and then get pulled out under the rug pulled out under you, is just so stressful, especially, when you're at a point where you have full-time employees and you have payroll and benefits and like they are relying on you. We had to do layoffs at one point. We had to do furloughs at one point. Like, it's not something we ever want to do. But
Sure.
I am always driven by my people and making sure that they are safe. And so I think I'm more, I don't know, specific about how I make certain choices because I don't want to do anything that's going to put them at major risk. But then you also have to think about, like, if you're not going to take risks, you're not going to grow. So it's a very tough balance there. There was one project, if you want specifics, it was being funded by a very wealthy philanthropist. It was for like the philanthropy arm of the work that he did. We got, there was already contracts out. There were already proposed, like, verbal approval. Like, he got in a fight with someone, like, he just got in a fight with someone. There was nothing that we could control. The project,
Okay.
which was with the organization, literally, I got a call 2 days later. Project's been canceled. Like, we had been
Oof.
planning on it. It was a 7-figure deal, like, just overnight because someone got in a fight with someone. Like, so those are the types of things that I
That's
have
tough.
flashbacks over. Yeah.
That's
That was
rough.
long ago. That was pre-pandemic futurist, but yeah, it's just, we got to have our guard up now because things like that have happened to us in the past. So, I don't know. That's some things
Yeah,
that.
those are great. Yeah, I think those are like just like the wild stories that I love talking to people who have their own businesses because there's just so many wild stories to learn from that, because that's life. Life just throws really
Mhm.
really difficult hurdles in your way. And that's like your goal. I mean, really your chief priority as a CEO is just find a way around them. And that's,
Um,
I think you've done a great job at that. I mean, being a VR company in business for 11 years is impressive because it's just an emerging field still, and it's going to come with a lot of different hurdles that we're not expecting. Some good, some really interesting stuff in terms of like tech, like the technology and hardware advancing in ways that you weren't expecting maybe, and it happens quick. So for you guys, it's like having to pivot your tech stack or the way that you develop to this new way of hosting or doing or putting your content on these new hardware pieces of hardware. So that's actually that could be a good segue for us to jump into like maybe some of the more interesting stuff that's happening in the tech field right now that's emerging, like 3D Gaussian Splats and generative worlds and AI, which is obviously a very hot topic, and maybe how you guys are emerging into that and maybe how you might start to implement into the futurist pipeline.
yeah, very good topic, exciting, and something we are always looking at because, as you know, it changes every day, and that's not an exaggeration. So we have started to leverage certain AI tools, some for production, most more for like design and concepting. So going back to the optimization piece, we have tried several different 3D, like, generative, like, model generation tools. I know one I've recently evaluated was Meshy, for example, and the what we need them for, it's just not what we need them for quite yet. Um, I think, like, one of the main things, and I can use Meshy as an example, like, I have a Uline catalog. I know it's weird, but I have a Uline catalog that I have with all these
I
different
have a
pieces
Uline
of,
catalog.
I know, yeah, who doesn't have a Uline catalog? I think they send them to everybody. But there's
It's a
like these
great
big
book.
carts. It's a great book. There's these big like dumpster carts, and we're working on just building up our industrial library of models because we use them all the time. So we're trying to build our own library of optimized assets so that we can just have them to pull from for projects or whatever. And so
Sure.
this Uline catalog came. I was so excited. I'm like, these are all the models I want to make. Let me think about what I could do with this. And so I found a model I liked. I went and got images of it on the website and put it into Meshy. And like literally a dumpster with wheels came out at 627,000 polys. I was like, what the heck?
That's heavy.
So it's very heavy and unnecessary. And so I used their optimization feature. I think it only lets you go down to like 5,000 or 3,000. like that's way too much for a dumpster.
That's a decent decimation, but yeah, I guess it's like how they're aligned too. Is like, does it look good? You know, just because it's a lot lower polys, like did it function?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like a lot of the models that we're using, we don't just need them to like sit there and look pretty. Like I need the wheels to be separated so they can roll. I need like the handle to work, and there's to be a pivot point so you can actually like pick it up and pull it. Like there are different things that we need for the functionality that of course we can't get out of Meshy yet. I don't know. Someday I really hope this is going to be a way to expedite the process. But I was talking to our senior artist. I'm like, I'm not trying to replace you. Like, heck no. I want to try to come up with ways that like you can still have the creative spatial planning, like modeling specialty that you have, but like what are some administrative things that like this could potentially alleviate? And so because we couldn't actually use the models from Meshy, one of the things we've talked about is like maybe like designers or me or the client, like we use Meshy to like get what's in our head into a visual format. And at least with this and bringing in the pictures, like Meshy was able to get like the rough shape and also like the proportions, because I think the proportions are something that also is something that we just have to trial and error if we don't have like an existing 3D model. And so like what if we could use this to like provide design reference to the art team, and then they make it, but they're able to like leverage this to kind of expedite the process of what's in the designers' heads into like what the artists create. Because that is something like we write it out, we put images, like we take videos on site, but sometimes like we can't use our words to come up with what we want. So there's a little bit of a disconnect. So it's like thinking of the AI tools that exist, and maybe we're not going to use them how people think we're going to use them. We're going to find another way though that makes sense for us. Now going into AI tools that we actually use for production, 11 Labs, for example, with audio, we've been leveraging that quite a bit for voiceover, especially for instructional content. Oftentimes, if it's narrative, we will still use real voice actors. But one of the reasons I do like 11 Labs is because they do compensate the individuals, the actors that that's voices are leveraged. And so we try to use voices that are real voice actors that have put their voices on 11 Labs so they still get paid. I have a couple of friends whose voices are on there, and they say they get checks. So I'm like, all right, well, that's great. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, that's cool. I think you could also like hire your own voice actor if you like really like their tone, and you can just build their voice into like have them come in and record, and then you can have that and just use it, iteratively, as many times as you want, and they get paid on like the initial push there when they come in and record. So yeah, I think it's an excellent tool. It's really cool you guys are using that, especially that kind of dumps into like the NPC conversation, which I know you guys probably dabble in a pretty decent amount, right? You're going to a VR experience, and you have these these characters that you could talk to and walk you through like training on a CNC machine. Or I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, we do. And sometimes if it's training, like if it's the character that's training the employee, oftentimes we do have to have that more rigid, like it is animated and pre-set with exactly what it's going to say, partially for like liability reasons, because you need to teach everyone the exact same thing. However, we have been working with the Convey platform, Convai. I think it's pronounced Convey. But they have 3D models. They integrate with Unreal MetaHumans. They also integrate with Ready Player Me and Reallusion's Character Creator. So we actually use Character Creator the most, but they'll integrate their, I guess, cognitive abilities of the characters you create with models that you already have, which is great. And then you can set up different decision trees. You can assign it a voice. It integrates with 11 Labs. So if you have a custom voice, you can use that. So the coolest thing that's easy for me to share is like I made my own character. I used my book to train it. I made a clone of my voice, and you can actually talk to me in VR.
Oh, cool. That's really neat. Yeah, that's really cool. That's a really nice use of that, actually. We're getting like a hey Jen, like these like making a clone of yourself avatars is like a whole new interesting space in AI. So it's cool that you guys are starting to like dabble in these. like emerging fields. And I like that you're not writing AI off, and you're also not saying like, let's replace all our employees. It's like, let's use this as an additive tool to our workflow to help you guys be more efficient. And I think that's like the chief priority, I think, of AI right now, is to just help us do what we do now, but more efficiently, right?
Yes,
Especially like,
absolutely.
the use of it for 3D models. Like, I know it's not quite there yet, to be able to like make a finished model, but it'd be great if you could cut down, and from a business owner's perspective, 40 hours on a modeling project, so they can focus on more of like the core like finished features. So they can like,
Yes.
really just iterate through these things quickly and then get the base model that they can then, do their expert work on, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
absolutely.
that.
I agree.
What's up with generative AI and worlds? Are you guys dabbling in that, to like build out
We have
environments?
Yeah, we have not gotten an opportunity to do quite as much of that as I would have liked. I would love any recommendations you have though, because yeah,
Yeah.
we've fortunately been very busy, but we do want to make sure we're taking time to explore. I think some of the generative modeling stuff has made me a little hesitant to even go after generative worlds, because then I'm like, well, if I can't use this, how could I use that in a whole environment? But I know, there may be different parameters or different platforms that I haven't explored. So do you have any recommendations?
We're I think it's early, so I don't know. This wouldn't be like a public facing thing, but this would be like more of an R&D thing in the back end. I know, like, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's Genie 3 by Google. Um, Basically, you can type in a prompt and create a generative world and go explore it. WASD or mouse or a controller, which is mind blowing.
Whoa, let's pause the podcast for 1 second. I want to show you guys a quick video on what Genie 3 is and how it works. Let's take a look.
What you're seeing are not games or videos. They're worlds. Each one of these is an interactive environment generated by Genie 3, a new frontier for world models. With Genie 3, you can use natural language to generate a variety of worlds and explore them interactively, all with a single text prompt. Genie 3 has real-time interactivity, meaning that the environment reacts to your movements and actions. You're not walking through a pre-built simulation. Everything you see here is being generated live as you explore it. And Genie 3 has world memory. That's why environments like this one stay consistent. World memory even carries over into your actions. For example, when I'm painting on this wall, my actions persist. I can look away and generate other parts of the world. But when I look back, the actions I took are still there. And Genie 3 enables promptable events, so you can add new events into your world on the fly. Something like another person, or transportation, or even something totally unexpected. You can use Genie to explore real-world physics and movement, and all kinds of unique environments. You can generate worlds with distinct geographies, historical settings, fictional environments, and even other characters. We're excited to see how Genie 3 can be used for next-generation gaming and entertainment. And that's just the beginning. Worlds can help with embodied research, training robotic agents before working in the real world, or simulating dangerous scenarios for disaster preparedness and emergency training. World models can open new pathways for learning, agriculture, manufacturing, and more.
All right, back to the podcast.
I just did a podcast with a guy who does VR therapy, where they're implementing this, create your own world. You just kind of type it out and it creates an HDRI. And it's being used specifically for people with like a fear of falling over an edge. So it's like, hey, create me on a mountain edge, or so like, and it'll put you there. This would be really interesting for you guys in the aspect of maybe, like you were saying, like off of one picture, like generating a 3D model, similar in the same regard. But if you got like pictures of the warehouses that you're building these training experiences for, you'd be able to get a few of those pictures and plug them in and make a 3D Gaussian splat and make an HDRI of that. And then you can build inside of that your actual like really core important 3D models that live inside that they're actually working with, I think, which is kind of like what you do now. I guess just mostly for adding like super realism for like this place they're going to be working. Which I'm not sure if you guys dabble in that in your own regard and like building out that environment now for like the experiences you guys do.
Yeah. Usually we will I mean, it depends on the use case, but oftentimes we will leverage like a 360 pano for the
Yeah.
skybox.
Yeah.
We've done it. We did a project, this was years ago, about crossing a crevasse at Mount Everest.
Okay.
And that was in the AltSpace VR days, which sad that that's gone. But yeah, the people we were working with actually had summited Mount Everest and had taken 360 images of the exact crevasse that we were creating the crossing experience for. So we were able to kind of blend that realistic, the actual mountains and sky,
Hmm.
and then the entire like crossing and the bridge and everything was all 3D modeled and animated. So yeah, I need to really go back to exploring that more, especially now that that can be generative. And then kind of blend that with the really detailed stuff that we're doing manually. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's just like a wild concept that it's like what's the future of that? Like what are we going to use this for? I think that's like my favorite thing to talk to people about is like what is like outside of, entertainment. And just like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, make me a space and I'll just fly around in it. What do we actually build with it? So it's like I think it's cool if you guys end up using something like that to implement in like business training software or experiences. And you got this guy that's doing it for like VR therapy. I think that's really neat use of technology, and I'm pretty excited to kind of see where that goes over the
Mm-hmm.
next 12 months or so, especially as it
Yeah,
gets
I will have
more
to check that
powerful.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
thank you.
there's a couple. I think Genie 3 is probably the most impressive. I think there is I'm not familiar with the name of them, but a Chinese firm kind of put out like a competitive model to that. So this is it's like just heating up. 40 Gaussian splatting is like another like hot world, which is
Woohoo.
like maybe something that you guys would be interested in researching that could be useful for you as well.
Yeah,
And then machine
thank
learning.
you.
Yeah, I know that you dabbled that in your book. Do you want to talk about your book a little bit? I think that would be a
Yeah,
great
I
topic.
can. What do you
Yeah,
want
so
to
what
know?
what inspired you to write a whole book to not just like talk about your experience building a company, but literally the blueprint on how to start and run a company like what you started?
Yeah, I will be totally honest. I did not set out to necessarily write a book. I was approached by my publisher who had heard about me from someone else, and they worked with me on the concept. So Wiley has been around a very long time. I like to say they were the publisher of Edgar Allan Poe. So that's how long they've been around.
Wow, didn't know that.
Yeah, their primary, I guess they're primarily known for educational material. They do a lot of textbooks. And
Okay.
so it's funny when they found me, I thought it was spam. Like I totally didn't think it was a real thing. And then I asked my friend who's a librarian, she's like, "You should take that call." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I did. And in that call, they were like, "Well, what would you want to write about if you were going to write a book?" I'm like, "Well, I'd probably write about what I know because I know a
Sure.
real true like research book takes a very, very long time. Something they told me is like technology changes so frequently, they want a manuscript in under 6 months. So that was like the goal. So I thought, okay, well, what would I want? First off, what would I want if I was just starting out? And second of all, what would help my clients or not necessarily my clients, but just like the people I talk to all the time. And so I feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm really good at explaining VR and technology to non-technical people. And so that's where it started was what could I create as a resource that, yeah, you could read it start to finish, but you don't have to. There's an index you could just pop around if someone you're on a call and they're like, I don't know, bring up 3D modeling and optimization. Like you could just quickly reference what that means to be informed, but also that like anyone could use who's just interested in learning about the space and what it takes to create something. And they liked it. And so I think in my initial little write up that they were going to bring to their, I don't know, whoever internally decides who gets to write a book, I had said, I want to create a blueprint to help people understand virtual and augmented reality. And my editor was like, it's going to be called the Extended Reality Blueprint. I'm like, that makes so much sense. So that's how it happened. Again, nothing I expected, but I'm so glad it happened when it did, because I think, as you said, like, it's a lot of information that's out there. There's just not one aggregated source. Like, you have to sift through Reddit threads and Google and like academic journals and marketing collateral, like, to find all this in one place. And so I appreciate that you noticed that. And yeah, it's really just for people who may not be developers but want to understand it.
Yeah, I think it goes through so many great things. I think I ran out of a highlighter, like highlighting so many like awesome parts. I'm not exaggerating. It's called the Extended Reality Blueprint. Like Andy said, I'll link this in the podcast comments if you'd like to go pick up a copy for yourself. But I think it's immensely valuable if you're interested in the space. I have recommended it a few times on my podcast when people ask for like book recommendations, which I always end the podcast with. So if you want to mull that over, if you got a book or a website or something that you'd like to pin at the end, feel free to plug that in outside of your own book as well.
Yeah. Yes, I'll have to think about that. Yeah, I think it's funny because I've gotten one like bad review. Everyone gets a bad review, and the review,
Sure.
I can't remember I think it's on Goodreads. Everyone can go look it up. It's like, this
I
book is
will.
not for developers. It's not technical. It's not technical enough. I'm like, yes, that is correct. Why did you give me 2 stars? So that's like the only bad review I got.
It's while it's not, no, it is not I would say a technical book, but it does get into some technical details.
It does.
Which is it's like so great about it. It's this like above the ground view of everything. And for someone who, it's like, that's me. Like, I love, that's like my style of reading. I want to see how the whole thing works. You kind of pulled the veil off the gears of how a company like yours works. And you get this intimate kind of look into like all the stuff that you would have never thought of. And you're like, oh, wow. And that starts sparking some more ideas. You're like, wow, this is like this is really complex. This is really difficult. This must be really hard to operate because, of all the shifting, like we talked about earlier, and tech debt. I know you go over that in the book as well, which is like, no one's favorite thing to talk about. And that's just, I think just an excellent read if you want to just kind of understand how the whole thing works. And then I think if you want to get into technical details, you can just kind of go out from there and research specifics. I think that's my favorite way to go about reading. I am curious though, how long did it take to write this?
Well, I am a massive procrastinator. So now that it's all said and done, I can admit this. I had it outlined pretty early on. I actually wrote the entire book in 6 weeks.
Wow.
I had 6 months,
That's
but I
impressive.
wrote it in 6 weeks. Yeah. Thank you. I think like I'm really good in the very early morning getting into like a flow. If it's early in the morning and I just don't even look at email and nothing, all notifications are off. So it was getting close to the deadline, like within a couple months. And I was like, okay, I really need to do this. Like, I had every chapter like outlined and bulleted kind of what I wanted to talk about. And that had been approved. So I would wake up like 6 to 9 a.m. every single day for 6 weeks, weekdays and weekends, and just knocked the whole thing out. So I feel like, yeah, procrastination, for any procrastinators listening, you understand. Sometimes it is better. Like, sometimes my product is better when there's that pressure. That's just how my brain works. And so it's crazy. Would not recommend it, but
I also operate in that wheelhouse myself. But for better or worse at times, but
exactly.
it always gets
for better
done,
or worse.
That little fire is something special when you're under the gun. And
Absolutely.
it makes you hyper focus on what you're working on. I think it's a cool workflow if it works for you.
Exactly.
It's,
not for everyone.
For those people. Well, I guess what was it's just like a brief curiosity is like, maybe since I've always been interested in writing books. What was like maybe the more difficult part of that process, or was it like super fluid for you working with like a publisher?
Yeah, I got like super lucky with the situation. So, they came to me, they assigned me editors. there's these like pay to publish places. It was not like that. Like I had a whole team that was supporting me, and that was that. Very traditional.
That's
I
nice.
had a good, yeah, very nice. I feel very fortunate for that. I had there was like multiple editors. One is called an acquisitions editor, and they were like kind of managing the relationship with me and like what my offer would be and all that. Then I had, I can't remember the exact editors' names, but like one's more like a project manager that's on the schedule, and then one is a um, editor that helps you while you're writing. So every time I'd finish a chapter, I'd send it to her. And like while I was writing the next chapter, she would edit it and send back. And that was great because she did not have any background in VR. She had done tech books before, but none VR. And so she would look at things and say like, this doesn't make sense, or like, I need more clarity here, or like, how do these things connect? And so I really appreciated that, like, I'm explaining something, but I see this every day for a decade. Like, I'm not really thinking how someone else is interpreting it. And so I really
Yeah.
appreciated that pushback. Yeah, it was a challenge from time to time, but it was like a challenging myself to think about, all right, if someone really has no idea what this is, how can I explain it to them? So that was great. And then there was like this final pass editors. They like lock the page numbers. They have the index because they're like, if you change anything, the index will be thrown off. And so that like I had to go through the entire book, and that was, I mean, one of the most annoying parts because I had to like double check every little thing. They actually fact checked a few things that I had said just about the industry and stuff, which was great. But like I noticed I had spelled Pico, like the VR headset manufacturer, with a capital P. And then other places I had done all caps. It's supposed to be all caps. So like that fine tooth comb part at the end. So another fun fact, when I got that, I was 9 months pregnant. My baby was due about 4 days from that point. So yeah,
That's right.
it was like,
Congrats again.
that was like a deadline. Thank you. It's like you talk about deadlines. That is a deadline that will not wait. So, speaking of fires, that was definitely a fire within me that made me get it done. But yeah, I don't know. Those are just like a few fun things throughout the process that I wasn't expecting, but made it a really, great, but also thought process.
That's a lot. Running a company,
It was a
writing a
lot.
book, and having a child all at the same time.
Yeah.
That's impressive,
Yes.
Annie.
I thank you. And it's funny because
Yeah.
like everyone's like, oh, that must have been so hard. I'm like, well, it would have been a lot harder writing the book after I had the baby because that's when the real work began. But
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for the timing.
Well, I think that was great. Thank you for walking through the story of your book. I guess before we jump into like a closing, tell us about a book or a website or a person recommendation. If you wanted to maybe mentally fast forward into 5 years or 10 years from now, maybe you have thought of this, maybe you haven't, but where you see futures being at that time, and maybe what that landscape looks like for you guys.
Ooh, that's interesting. I think about this a lot, and I never have like an exact plan, but I would say, uh, and this is partly for just like company stability, but partly because I think this is where things are heading, is continuing to produce content that is more widely accessible. So yeah, custom is great, but there are so many companies and organizations that are priced out of using VR because it is still so expensive to produce. So I'm not saying it's like cheap, but creating content that is more universal, that is a significantly lower price point, I feel like will help with adoption long term. And it'll also help a lot of people. I mean, you heard the numbers I shared earlier about just like efficiency and then the safety impact and all that. It's like, it kind of is unfortunate that a lot of people are just priced out of using something that can help so many people. So I think continuing to invest in content production of our own content. I know it's business content, but yeah, safety content, and just trying to widen that reach so that more people can receive those benefits is something I want to do. And I would hope that, in 5 years' time, the business maybe 50-50, we might even be more skewed towards the produced content that we are licensing. But I don't think I ever really want to get rid of the custom, because that is not only what is super interesting and fascinating, because we get to go into these massive companies and like learn deeply about what they do and then create it. But I think those projects also push us to like do things new and figure out new ways to accomplish what they want. And so I think we just learned so much from doing those projects that I would never want to give those up completely.
Yeah, that's admirable. Yeah, doing things at the corporate level, but also trying to build community, because you like genuinely care about the VR community. I think that's great. I know you voiced that in the book as well, and you also I believe still run the XR meetup in Atlanta. So it's like it's really important to have that. That's, I mean, for me specifically, I that's where I got my start in the community. So it's really important to build those things, and that's I love seeing that these things are starting to populate more, and stay working even through like these little lulls of interest. I know like it goes up and down, which is I guess like a question to tie into here, real brief before we get to the closing remarks is. As AR glasses become more widely available, we're still heavily in the R&D phase, as you probably know. But I think soon, sub 5 years, we're going to have some very capable AR glasses. Do you foresee futurists maybe building more experiences in AR as that starts to maybe become more popular?
Yeah, I could see that. I think it's a lot of it is dependent on the hardware, as you've mentioned. Like
Yeah.
we can already create all these like amazing worlds and interactions in a VR headset. We could technically right now leverage MR and pass through to put those machines in your environment, but no one's going to be wearing a VR headset like out on a machine floor. That's super dangerous.
Right.
So like it really is going to be the evolution of smart glasses and like AR wearables to get to that point. But I mean, a lot of what we are doing, there's so much crossover in the skill set, and the 3D models ideally would be universal, even the interactions and even the animations and all of that, that like it wouldn't be a huge lift. It just would be right now. So
Sure.
I think being able to continue to leverage that content in new ways through better AR glasses is the ultimate goal. Like the ultimate goal is to experience it wherever you are with whatever you have. We're just not quite there yet, but yeah, you're right. There are so many. I can't even count the amount of AR glasses that are in production right now. Like every company under the sun seems to be making something. So it's very
Yeah.
exciting.
I am very excited. Yeah, big
I know
AR
you are.
guy.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I've outed my nerdiness for the AR sector. Yeah, so cool what's going on right now. I was in Dublin, Ireland when Meta released their news that they're working on Orion, and I just like remember I just went straight to a bar and had a beer and just celebrated myself by myself. I was so excited. It was so cool, and now we have
Amazing.
like all these smart glasses coming out from all these different companies. Not quite AR, but it's the toe dip, I think, to get people kind of used to having hardware on their face that's helping them with their work or social life. I think it's such a cool time to be getting into the space. So yeah, thank you for briefing that. And then if you'd like to close with any book recommendations or website recommendations or a person that you think is really, really cool and influential in the space that you think is valuable for people, I'd love to hear what you got.
Yeah, I am having a little bit of a deer in the headlights moment. I will say,
It
and
could be anything.
I know someone I have been just consistently enjoying, just following, and I have to make sure I'm saying his name right, as someone named Anthony, is it Vitillo? He has been around forever. I can send you his LinkedIn.
Sure.
Later to include in the chat. He has been releasing a consistent newsletter for probably over a decade now, maybe 8 to 10 years. And
Okay.
there have been newsletters and people that kind of come and go, but he does like a weekly roundup every week. And I appreciate the consistency. So I can drop that link to you to share. I mean, there are a lot of others, but just, top of my head,
Yeah,
that guy comes to mind.
that's great.
And then on the and he's more just like industry stuff. And then on the enterprise stuff,
Sure.
I know I mentioned Arbor XR earlier as an mobile device management platform we use. They, for any listeners who are very interested in like the enterprise space, they do a ton in that space. They have a podcast with some really great interviews with companies themselves that are implementing VR or XR or anything. So you can really hear directly from the source what they are working on. It's not through like content producers like me, it's directly from these enterprises. And so, I would recommend checking that out too, especially for people who are really interested in the business side of it.
Yeah, that's great. I'll link both of those in the podcast notes. If you think of something after the fact, just send it on over, and I'll throw it into the Annie's recommendations category there.
Great.
Yeah.
Will do.
Thank you for coming on, Annie. I thought this was like an excellent peek inside of what it's like to talk to someone who owns a VR company and all the intricacies of that. And if you're listening and you really like this conversation, again, pick up Annie's book. It goes into great detail on all those things, further than what we talked about today. And thanks again for coming on. I appreciate your time. I know you're super busy, so.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a fantastic conversation. I hope I get to see you in person soon too.
Yeah, actually, that'd be great. I hope I can get down to Atlanta here in the next maybe 4 or 5 months, fit it into the schedule and make an appearance at a XR Atlanta event.
Yes.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for watching episode 9 of the Trending XR podcast. It's incredible that you're here and that you've been with me for this journey so far. I can't thank you enough. Episode 10, 11, 12 are already recorded, and those are coming out soon. You're going to love those people. And episodes 13, 14, 15, and 16 are being booked, and these are some insane guests. So thank you so much for being a part of this journey. I love talking about these things and to these really cool people. I hope that you're getting value out of this, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks. Peace.